They tried to make things look better the day before. 400 people were taken out of one facility yesterday. But even with that, it's awful, the conditions that these people are placed in. The sad truth of it is that we saw one good place. That's not the sad truth. We did see one good place run by Catholic Charities in Sister Norma, where the people were treated well, where they had a path where they could be adjudicated properly and given a fair shot. But the rest of the facilities weren't close to that. And the damn shame of it all is that all comes from the top. If the policy making from the top changes, there could be many more facilities like the Catholic Charities facility we saw, which was really not great, but certainly decent, rather than the facilities like this, where it's just awful, awful, awful to see how these people are being treated. Senator Merkley.
Well, it's 13 months ago, a little more than that, June 3rd of last year, that I came here and talked to a few folks in the press before going in and saw for the first time the children in cages and the child separation. And underlying that is a philosophy of this administration of inflicting trauma on refugees and trauma on children as a strategy of deterrence. And this strategy is just wrong. It is un-American. It is not supportable under any moral code, under any set of ethics, under any religion, and it has to end. Child separation is still taking place at some level, not to the degree it was, but it's still taking place. And the strategy of making life difficult by stopping kids at the border and leaving them stuck in Mexico, through the metering that sends families back into Mexico when they come to our border and they're there without family and funds and friends, very difficult. And then they get a credible fear interview and sent back into Mexico under the Migrant Protection Protocol or leave them in Mexico policy. Another time period of great difficulty. This is not the America we know. We're arguing that when people come to our border, we understand that they're fleeing difficult circumstances, that they're fleeing persecution, they're fleeing famine, and in the time that they're proceeding to their asylum hearing, we want them treated with dignity and respect as we would want our family members to be treated. That is a policy that does come from the top, as Minority Leader Schumer just said, and that policy from the top needs to change.
Senator Durbin.
I think all Americans know that our immigration system is broken. The president's solution is to allow us to detain children for longer periods of time and eliminate the Flores limitation on detention. That's wrong. You can't walk into this building and see children in the situation that these children are in and believe that it would be better for them and better for America for them to stay in detention in these cages for a longer period of time. The second thing the president wants to do is eliminate the requirement that we turn these children over when necessary to some safe place. I think Americans want to know that when these children leave this country, they are going into a safe situation. The third situation with the president's agenda is to change the definition of asylum, a definition that applies across the board around the world. We need to make certain that the United States stands by its values that we've stood by for over 70 years since World War II, when we learned a bitter lesson about turning away refugees. We have to have a system and a policy that reflects the values of this country. I'll be returning to Washington with my colleagues next week. We will start the debate in the Senate Judiciary Committee about President Trump's proposal. We are going to talk about what we saw today, what we saw with these families and these children. And we're going to remember especially what we saw with Sister Norma. When these young people and their families are treated with dignity, with respect, and with love, it is an amazing thing to witness. And it's part of what America has been giving to the world for so many decades and needs to continue to.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you. I stand here today not just as a United States Senator, but I stand here as a granddaughter of immigrants, a daughter, and a mother. And when you walk through these facilities and you realize what you see, all I could think of was the history behind our country, that people came in ships, people came to our ports, people have come to our borders for over 200 years seeking asylum. We need to allow that to continue to happen, and the policy, this culture of cruelty has to stop. We can still have policy, good policy that is humane. We cannot forget our humanity. And when you walk through these hallways, you realize that they're human beings. They're someone's children. They're someone's sons and daughters, aunts and uncles. They're not these people. They're someone's family. We can't forget that.
Thank you, Senator Rose and Senator Menendez.
Thank you. Let me thank Senator Schumer, the Democratic leader, for bringing all of my colleagues together to see firsthand. All of these colleagues represent all of the critical committees that in one form or another have something to do with this issue. I'm reminded of what I saw today is a stain, a dark chapter in the nation's history. When I talk to a mother who has a 3-month-old in her arm and say, why did you flee? Why did you leave? And she says, porque estaban matando muchas personas donde vivo. They were killing many people where I was living. When I saw another mother with a 7-month-old, and I said, why did you leave? ¿Por qué te fuiste? And her answer was, because they were kidnapping children. These parents overwhelmingly face a choice. Stay and die, see my daughter raped, or have my child put forcibly into a gang. If not, they die. If that's my choice as a parent, as a grandparent, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave. And when we pressed CBP today, over 98% of all of these people are not criminals. That should be said time and time again, because the president would have us believe that we are being besieged by those who are criminals. Their own admission was 98% were not. So you make this problem worse when you cut off all the money that we provided for Central America. As the senior Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee, we need to strengthen the Central American countries to help them deal with the las maras, with the gangs, with the narcotics traffickers, with strengthening their institutions, which creating a better life there, so people don't have to flee. But the president cut all of the money that we had put to make progress, which even the Secretary of State said, we're making progress, certified to the Congress of the United States. And then when those people, thousands of miles, come to the border, they still seek to obey the law by presenting to themselves at a legal point of crossing. And what are they told? Oh, no, no hoy, not today. Oh, no, not mañana. Oh, no, not a week. Oh, no, not a month. We are purposely, under the administration's policy, creating people who then have no choice but to take a chance and cross the river, and as we saw with that father and mother die. I don't know what type of politics that is for the President of the United States, but it's shameful. And we all need to speak out as Americans, and I'm so glad my colleagues are here to do that. Let me just briefly say in español, le agradezco al senador Schumer que nos ha traído todos juntos aquí, colegas de todos distintos miembros de los comités más importantes en el Senado que toman sobre esta posición, porque hemos visto la tragedia humana de estas familias. Familias que simplemente están huyendo de la violencia más horrífica que se puede ver, no solamente en el hemisferio, pero en el mundo. Y cuando tú le preguntas a una madre con un niño de 3 meses en la mano, ¿por qué te fuiste? Y dice, porque imagínate, estaban matando tantas personas donde vivo, que tenía que irme. O otra madre que tenía un niño de 7 meses, ¿por qué te fuiste? Porque estaban actualmente cogiendo niños y vendiéndolos. Esa es la violencia que estas personas huyen. Y por eso cuando forzamos al gobierno a decir, ¿cuánto es el % de personas que no tienen ningún delito? 98% no tienen ningún delito. Así que esto es una tragedia humana creada por el presidente, cortando los fondos a Centroamérica, que ha creado una inquietud más grande, limitando a las personas que pueden legalmente pedir asilo en la frontera y después tratándolo de esta forma. No podemos continuar en esta forma y por eso vamos a seguir luchando para cambiar esta política del presidente Trump.
I just want to reiterate 2 points. Senator Menendez touched on them. We asked Secretary McAleenan what percentage of these people are criminals. Minuscule, 2%, 3%. But they're treating them all like criminals. And if you listen to the president, you'd think they were all criminals. They're not. They're people simply seeking some safety, some honor, some decency for their children. And second, you'll say, what's your solution? We have a solution that could work. It's a horrible trek. We talked to people going through this long trek. Most of them took more than a month with their tiny little children with them. Let them apply for asylum in Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, and things could be fairer and a lot easier. We'd need more immigration judges, of course, and we need some help to go after the gangs. But that is so much of a better solution than what we saw here, and we're going to fight very hard for it. A number other of my colleagues will go in seniority order. Anyone? Ron? I just ask everyone to be brief because we have to get a 3:30 plane.
I'm going to be particularly brief. To me, what we see continues to illustrate the evidence that the zero tolerance policy makes zero sense and is simply not in line with American values. Now, to me, what leaps out at you today, and I'm so glad that our nonprofits, our wonderful NGOs are here today, what they have made clear to me is how important it is now to, when we get back to Washington, push policies that promote more transparency and more accountability. For example, with respect to Customs and Border Patrol, remove the identities, but tell us what people they have. I mean, these are fundamental questions, and I just appreciate the chance to work with my colleagues.
Senator Cardin.
Ben Cardin from Maryland. America's strength is in our values, who we are, and our leadership. Asylum is opening up borders to those who are persecuted. The United States has always stood for open borders to protect those that are under genuine fear of harm. President Trump is trying to end that, and that's not what America is about. His policies are aimed at making it impossible for people that have genuine fear to be able to come to America. We got to stop that for the values of this country and the strength of America.
Senator Casey.
Jack, you want to go? I'll make 3 quick points. One is, one issue that we were all paying close attention to today was the welfare of children. And there are a lot of folks in facilities like this that are trying to do the right thing, but they've only recently been getting the help that they need. We have to have a much higher standard for the quality of care of children. That's why Senator Merkley's legislation that virtually every Democrat is supporting is essential to hold ourselves to the highest standards of making sure that children and the families that come here get quality health care from the moment that they arrive all throughout the process. Second, the president could do good work if he wanted to lead the country in the right direction, which is to fix our broken immigration system, focus on the countries where we have so many refugees coming from because they're fleeing violence or other circumstances. But unfortunately, the president uses language which is only about fear and smear and demonize and divide, instead of leading the country in the right direction to fix our broken immigration system, hold ourselves to the highest standards for our children, and make sure that our asylum system, as others have recognized, is a validation of American values. We know how to do this well as Americans, but we need leadership from a president. Unfortunately, this president likes to divide rather than unite.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. What we saw today was a continuing humanitarian crisis that is on the conscience of American people and ought to shock the conscience of the American people. And that term, humanitarian crisis, was used to me with one of the senior officials who accompanied us today. It is a humanitarian crisis of Donald Trump's making. And the money, $4+ billion, will help to correct some of the failings of this system. But fundamentally, it is broken. And what's needed is comprehensive immigration reform. There is no reason why we can't reform the entire immigration system. We had a proposal that passed the Senate. A number of us worked on it in 2013. It was bipartisan, and we can do it again. But in the meantime, and let me say this with gratitude, the folks who work here, the Customs and Border Protection personnel, have a difficult, near impossible job to do. And that's also of Donald Trump's making. So reform the system, give these folks, when they leave here, a court date and an address where they have to go. Right now they're getting papers that don't give them the basic information they need to comply with the law. That condemns them, in effect, to disobey it and then to be deported. So I think that what we've seen here is going to haunt us for a long time to come.
I'm grateful to Senator Schumer for leading this delegation. We visited several different places here in McAllen today. For me, the highlight was the opportunity to pray. Sister Norma at the Catholic Charities Humanitarian Respite Center led all of us, along with Senator Menendez and our whole delegation and dozens of migrants, in praying that the heart of our nation will be opened and that we will take action. The facilities we visited today are less bad because of the supplemental passed by Democrats and Republicans. They are less crowded, but just a few weeks ago, they were so horribly overcrowded. The conditions were so beyond what is in any circumstance humanly acceptable that we have to redouble our efforts. I don't have any disagreement with the men and women we saw of the Coast Guard, of the Uniformed Public Health Service, of the Custom and Border Patrol. They are doing their best under difficult circumstances. My disagreement is with President Trump and a policy of using cruelty to children as a part of immigration policy. Senator Merkley's proposed a bill, the Stop Cruelty to Migrant Children Act, which is what we should take up and pass. It is possible to fix our country's broken immigration system, and it's possible to do so in a way that reflects the best in our country's values. That's my hope and prayer after today's visit.
Thank you. You know, the people we saw today could have been our parents, or our grandparents, or our great-parents, great-grandparents, or our great-great-great-great-grandparents. They could have been Irish or German or Italian or Jewish or anybody else. And each time these waves of immigrants came, there were certain Americans who decided to divide and be nasty. But America overcame that and united. And all of these generations became really fine Americans who we're proud of. We hope and pray, we beseech the American people, rise to the occasion, do what Americans in generations before have done, and reject those who viciously, nastily, or for political gain seek to divide us, unite us for a greater America. We'll take just two quick questions.
Senator Schumer, you last week, or excuse me, on July 3rd, you said that the leadership was toxic at CBP, but some of your Democratic colleagues have said that CBP is not the problem. You also called for the top leadership.
Well, the very top leadership of CBP has had a very bad history, and that's bad, but I think it comes right from the very top and the White House. You need to change the policy from the top. That includes the top people, the president, that includes Mr. Miller, and it includes the very top people at CPB. Last question. Well, we'd like to work with the Republicans, but so far they've been intransigent. And when Donald Trump, it's not like the old days, where Senator Menendez and Senator Durbin and myself would with Senator McCain and Senator Graham and Senator Flake and Senator Rubio and came together. Donald Trump he makes the Republicans afraid to come together with us. We're waiting for them to come together with us. We hope and pray they will. Thank you, everybody.